joining us on this wonderful morning together. We know that many of you are just seeing the notification and are joining us. Please feel free in the comments section to tell us where you're watching from today and any questions that you might have that we can answer in this episode or in a future episode. You know, the great thing about these lives is it gives us an opportunity to really give you some insights on some of the issues that are going on today from a perspective that is uniquely Rod's. And you know from following on rodmartin.org that you can go and read about the world anywhere, but you come to rodmartin.org to understand it. And the chief architect of that perspective on conservatism and culture and the intersection of what happens in our lives is our very own friend, entrepreneur, futurist, and philosopher capitalist, Rod Martin. Rod, welcome.
Good to be here.
We got a little different setup for this show than we've had the last couple of weeks. We've actually come inside of the Rod Martin inner sanctum, the great the great office where you generate all your ideas and do your writing and business. So thanks for inviting all of us in to a little bit different atmosphere today for the show.
Well, it's a nice place, and you guys should all join us here more. We love to have everybody.
Well, and I will tell you that you may see online that there are some people that have books as a background that's fake. This is really the Rod Martin Library, and I can attest that Rod has really read these books.
Yeah, thousands and thousands of them.
So this is not a Pretenderville. Now let's get down to brass tacks, because there is a lot going on, even this morning in the Trump administration, a lot that's been going on in the last week. I know that you've been traveling, but as always, you're getting messages and being asked for insight and counsel on the things going on in this country. And we haven't had a chance to talk about Obamacare repeal. And it just seems like it's a real cluster of things going on in D.C. right now. The House passed something, the Senate is going to, they're not going to, they're going to vote, they've got a Cruz amendment. All we see are headlines on the inability for Republicans to get anything done. Should we be believing what we're reading in the news headlines?
Well, it's certainly a cluster of something. I think that's a pretty good way to put it.
Yeah.
But I would encourage everybody to remember that the polls that were completely ludicrous for the past 2 years didn't suddenly and magically become good around January 20th.
Okay.
You know, we still have polling that is oversampling Democrats by as much as 12 points. We continually have polls showing Donald Trump in the 30s on approval that are sampling adults. Just adults.
Not even like registered voters or likely voters.
Registered voters, not likely voters, just
adults.
Adults. Okay. You know, and who are these adults? Well, again, they're oversampling Democrats by this ludicrous number. So if you understand anything about what I just said, you know that what we're talking about is polling that is completely ludicrous. It's just fake news, for lack of a better term. So it's worth keeping that in mind about some of what's going on. Rasmussen is probably the best public polling right now, and they have Trump in the 40s, and that's probably about where he ought to be.
Sure.
Reasonably consistent historically. So that's an important thing to understand. And I just mention all that as a backdrop to the rest of the fake news establishment, as it were. You're getting a lot that's wrong. Now,
that's painting the picture on what's going on with Obamacare.
So are we actually, well, with everything, actually. So okay, with the specifics of the Senate bill, is it a disappointment that we didn't pass something the other day? Yes. Does that mean anything? Well, we didn't pass the House bill the first time either.
Really?
Come to think of it, we didn't pass Obamacare initially. It took until it had been pronounced dead. The Republicans obviously thought it was dead. Paul Ryan had that ludicrous conference where the president got to hijack their agenda, and all of a sudden life was breathed back into the then Democrat Senate bill, and blah, 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 and pretty soon you have Obamacare, which everyone had said was doomed, over,
done.
done.
No chance.
Yeah. So a lot goes on in the sausage making. Right now, Mitch McConnell still has a vote scheduled on clean repeal. Now, why would he have a vote scheduled if it's over? And we're really only down to a couple votes needed. I don't know what bribery is going to go on to get people over the hump, but when you're within 2 votes in the Republican conference, you're very, very close. And again, they still have a vote scheduled. So I think we're far from done on this. I would also, actually parroting Mitch McConnell on something, point out that last I checked, a Congress is 2 years, not 6 months.
That's true.
While I would really like this thing rooted out completely, they have some time. Now, the interesting thing about the clean repeal bill, which Donald Trump has now advocated several times,
yes, he has,
is that if you go that route,
right,
from the perspective of July or August of 2017, instead of when I was advocating it, frankly, back in January.
That's right.
I thought, and I told you I thought, that they needed to come in on January 21 and pass a repeal bill that had a year clock on it or a 2-year clock. So you're sunsetting the legislation. And that gives Congress time to work through all the details, whatever sausage making is going to be needed to actually replace this catastrophe that is currently the law with something that is actually free market based. You can't just go back to where we were before. Where we were before was frankly terrible. It was just nowhere near as terrible as where we are now.
Right.
So for my conservative friends who say, well, let's just repeal, we don't need to replace. No, you're very, very mistaken. Where we were before was also bad. So we actually need to get to a free market solution.
Right.
Repeal is only the first step of that. But frankly, because we are now 6 months in, if we were to repeal today, that means there's going to be an election in between us and likely passage.
Right.
That's good for us. Folks, I got to tell you, the Democrats have to defend 25 Senate seats 18 months from now.
Right.
The Republicans only have to defend 8.
Yep.
A lot of those 25 seats are in states that Donald Trump won, states in which he's still doing well, even if those polls say otherwise. The likelihood of a Democrat sweep next year is exceedingly low, even if the Republicans screw all this up, which, they're Republicans,
They may
so
very
there's
well
a
do
pretty
it.
good chance of
Very
that.
well do it.
It may not matter.
Right.
There's a very high probability that we gain in the Senate, and every additional gain in the Senate is a very strong chance that people like Susan Collins just don't matter anymore. At 52 votes, they can hold us hostage.
So let me see if I got this right. If they pass a clean repeal right now, and they have the time then to replace with a market-driven system, a system that actually gives us a tremendous healthcare system.
Yes.
With time.
Which is easy to do.
Instead of being, kind of held by the reins by these rhinos that we absolutely have to work with to get their votes on something that we jam in now, we could then buy ourselves the time to not be as dependent on those rhinos or replace those rhinos. And instead of settling for something to replace Obamacare just for the sake of doing it, we can actually create good, conservative, market-driven principles and policies if we go clean repeal and then work on the replacement.
Yes, I have no doubt that we can bribe some of these people into doing something. And I say bribe very deliberately. Yes, you're going to end up paying for this somehow because that's who these evil people are. And don't misunderstand. I'm not saying anything illegal. I'm saying that this one state's going to get such and such that they shouldn't.
Right.
And that one state is going to get such and such that they shouldn't. Just like Obama had to do on the Obamacare vote.
Right.
That's just how the legislative process works, however distasteful it may be. I have no doubt that we can do that. I just don't know that we're going to be thrilled with the result. Clean repeal now, which is feasible. McConnell may have to get rid of the 60-vote rule.
Yes.
And I don't know if he has the votes to do that, but I think he could get them. If we were to do that, yes, after November of next year, I think we have a chance at true free market reform that could be fantastic. Now, I'm not saying we should wait to replace Obamacare until then. What I am saying is that back a couple months ago, when everybody was complaining that Donald Trump was talking about 3 phases toward health care, it's like, what's 3 phases? We never heard about 3 phases.
Just rip off the Band-Aid.
What are we talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, you haven't heard about it because Donald Trump is smarter than the media says he is. He does have an idea of where this has to go.
Yeah.
With 52 votes, you're not going to get everywhere we want to go. Nowhere close.
Right.
So, yes, there is an idea at present that you would do this in stages. And if you're going to work through the reconciliation process, as we would have to do currently, that's necessary. But the point is, if you get out past November of next year, there's a pretty high probability that you could do it in one swipe. So let's say we do some decent repeal and replace in the next couple months, which I think is probably more likely than not. If you're able to do that, you're probably not going to be thrilled with the result. It's going to be better. It's not going to be as bad. But you're going to have 2 or 3 more bites at the apple to do something that is really great. And I think this president is committed to that.
So as we've been discussing and focus on Obamacare and the vote that is or isn't going to take place, and I appreciate your insight on the history of drawing how Obamacare was supposed to be dead, the House bill was supposed to be dead, now the Senate bill is supposed to be dead, but they keep coming back to life. So that's a really good perspective.
That's the beauty of controlling, Congress.
Right.
We can bring them back.
That's right. There's a little something going on that may not have caught everyone's attention, and Robert Mueller, the special investigator, he has ramped up the number of attorneys, ramped up the scope, expanded the scope of what he's looking into. A lot of attorneys with Clinton donor backgrounds now looking to look into Donald Trump's businesses and business endeavors going back years. What is going on with this Mueller investigation, and is there something that the president can do to limit its far-reachingness? This seems like it is now a taxpayer-funded witch hunt.
I hate to use that term because it's the cliche du jour, but it's accurate. I mean, there's no getting around this. Mueller, we find out this week, is horribly conflicted, not least because he actually interviewed with Trump for the role of FBI director the day before he was named special investigator.
Oh, wow.
So he gets turned down for that, and then he's immediately supposed to investigate the guy who didn't hire him. You can't have that. Plus, just the number of conflicts on his team is becoming staggering. It is as though he is hiring the Clinton campaign staff to investigate Donald Trump. This is just a continuation of the election. It is utterly bogus, and it is particularly bogus in that now we're hearing this because the Special Investigator's Office is leaking. They are committing felonies and leaking this information because otherwise we would have no way to know this whatsoever. We now know from them that they are investigating things like the sale of a home Trump owned in 2008 down in South Florida. How can this possibly relate to a presidential campaign that no one had conceived of as even possible at the time? This is an effort to just destroy Donald Trump. This is, as Newt Gingrich has been calling it, a silent coup. This has to stop. The special investigator was brought into the process through fraud.
Yep.
We know that from Jim Comey's own lips in sworn testimony. He illegally leaked information that was misleading for the purpose, he said,
of
getting a special prosecutor, his best friend,
That's
Robert Mueller, appointed to go after the guy who had just fired him. So this is just utterly an abortion of justice, and it needs to stop.
What can the president, or is it Attorney General Jeff Sessions, do to either eliminate the special prosecutor or restrict the special prosecutor? Is there anything that can be done from either the administration or the Attorney General's office, the Department of Justice?
Well, Trump isn't wrong about Sessions, and I love Jeff Sessions. He is awesome, but the way he handled this was abysmal. And if he had been forthcoming with Donald Trump, Trump could have appointed him to half a dozen appropriate roles in the administration other than Attorney General. He really did wrong here. And Trump's displeasure, whatever you think of the way he expressed it, is absolutely justified.
Yeah.
Yes. But regardless, yes, Mueller actually works for the President of the United States. It is completely legitimate to put some boundaries on the special prosecutor, special investigator, whatever he wishes to call himself. It is completely legitimate to do that. And I would suggest that it would be even more legitimate to get rid of this office, every employee of it, starting with Mueller, and if there is anything to investigate, hand it back to the FBI where it belongs. We now have a bipartisan faith expressed in Donald Trump's appointee for FBI director.
That's right.
We have a system that works just fine, and we have a history going back decades of special prosecutors running amok. The Democrats used to scream about this, so they are a bit of stop to complain now.
Right.
This needs to end.
We talk about the D.C. bubble and people being caught up in the D.C. bubble. But now there is a move on the technology side to expand the D.C. bubble, or at least let us get into D.C. much quicker. Elon Musk has come out and said that he has gotten some kind of government approval. We don't know from what government.
We have no idea what.
For a Hyperloop between New York City and Washington, D.C. that makes the trip, 23 minutes?
29 minutes from somewhere in downtown Manhattan to somewhere in downtown Washington, D.C.
This is revolutionary transportation technology, and I think we hear Hyperloop and our brains go into thinking of some type of a Star Trek, kind of way of moving quickly. Ron, what is the Hyperloop and why is it important? Why is this a milestone moment in technology and transportation?
Well, regular readers of rodmartin.org already know, and I encourage you to be a regular reader if you aren't already. Go to rodmartin.org. Obviously, you can read plenty of stuff on the site itself, but you should also sign up for our Rod Martin report, our various newsletters we send out. Go to rodmartin.org/NAC. NAC is for New American Century, because we're going to give you a special report on why this century is going to be a greater American triumph than the one just passed. And part of what we cover is advanced transportation. This is not something we had in view when that report was written. Right. Actually, this is a little bit ahead of that, but the Hyperloop is an extraordinary idea that can most easily be described as your experience when you go to your bank. And you go to the drive-through window, you take out a deposit slip and a check, stick it in one of those little tubes, and it just shoots whoosh right over to the teller. That's kind of the idea, except that the idea here involves you whooshing between cities at about the speed of sound. It is truly amazing when you consider that what passes for high-speed rail in the United States usually runs between about 80 miles an hour and 120.
That's right.
Here we're talking about around 750 miles an hour. It would utterly transform transportation in this country.
Yeah.
I don't know what Elon has in mind as far as verbal government approval from an unstated government agency. I don't know what that means, but I don't doubt that it's real, and I don't doubt that it's needed. He's talking about his new tunneling company, creating
Boring company, right?
The Boring Company. Yes, it's pretty,
apropos.
It's pretty sweet.
Yeah.
He's talking about that, building some of the path, which makes sense because obviously the route between D.C. and Manhattan is rather congested.
Right.
So there are places where you're probably going to need tunnels, certainly going to need tunnels under the water. And so there are a number of complexities to this route, and it's one of the reasons that a lot of people had thought that if he built a Hyperloop, it would not be there first, but that seems to be where he's aiming. The more interesting thing about this in some ways is that Elon is talking about building this. And as you know, there are a couple of companies working on Hyperloop.
There are.
But Elon had said he would not be personally doing it. And all of a sudden, he is very much in the game. So take some of that incredible money he's making on Tesla and SpaceX and possibly become the biggest player in his own idea. But yes, that's transformative. There would be stops in the major cities along the way. You're talking about basically making the Northeast Corridor one city.
Yeah.
Because geography is less a function of actual distance than technological distance. Whatever city you may live in, I assure you, the outskirts of it were too far away when you were on horseback.
Right.
And now you go to a city like Dallas, and places that could not be imagined to be part of the Metroplex are built up areas, and people are moving on. So it really does come down to speed of transportation and how available that transportation is. 29 minutes between New York City and Washington, D.C. means that's really all one town, and it will have a transformative effect, not just on those cities, but on all the other places that want one next.
That's true. That's true. You know, it's fascinating to see the intertwining of culture and government and economics and technology. And there are very few places where you get an explanation of how all those things impact the world around you, like rodmartin.org. And if you're a regular visitor to the site or to the Facebook fan page, you know that there's always a great number of articles and insights to really give you the understanding of knowing the trends that we're facing now and then what is off into the future. And if you haven't already signed up to get the special report and to receive the Rod Martin report, so every week send out the most frequently viewed articles on politics, culture, economics, and technology. You want to get that absolutely free into your inbox, including a link to the replay of Rod Martin Live and the Rod Martin Show. And the best way to do that is get the special report, The New American Century, Why America Will Be Stronger Than You Think. That's at rodmartin.org/NAC. Or if you're on a mobile device, you can text ROD Report, R-O-D Report, all one word, no spaces, to 33444. That's ROD Report to 33444, and we'll immediately send you your very own copy of the special report, The New American Century, and make sure that you never miss any of the insights that we provide on a weekly basis at rodmartin.org. Well, Rod, do you have any parting wisdom for us?
Just pay attention to what's really going on. The media is, at this point, nothing but a collection of corporate super PACs.
Yeah.
If you happen to agree with them, that's still bad, because they aren't telling you facts at this point. They are telling you what they want you to hear. They are blatantly engaged in what has been loosely called advocacy journalism. That just means they're telling you propaganda.
Right.
Now, that does not help anyone. It doesn't help anybody on their side to make an informed judgment. The only way that helps is if you just don't care what's true.
Right.
So pay attention to what's really going on. Get deeper than the headlines. Get deeper than one source. I learned when I was at Cambridge to read all of the newspapers across the spectrum. Because,
not just one?
Yeah, because British journalism never took on this arrogant view that we've succumbed to in America, that somehow journalism is supposed to be objective and neutral in viewpoint. No, they have a socialist newspaper, they have a conservative newspaper, they have several shades in between, and they're completely upfront about their point of view. You don't read The Guardian expecting to get just the facts, ma'am, just the facts. No, it comes from their perspective.
Right.
That's so much better, because then you can read 5 or 6 or 7 different perspectives on the same thing with the facts.
Right.
Now, that's just infinitely better. And our media, by pretending objectivity, has shaded every political debate of my lifetime, and since well before that.
Right.
That objectivity is disappearing. It will ultimately bite the left in the butt,
Yeah.
because the strongest thing they had was the pretense of objectivity. That's gone.
That veneer's off. It's gone.
But what isn't here is an honest media that tells you up front who they are and where they're coming from. So look deeper. Don't get fooled. And that's part of why we do rodmartin.org, so that you can see what's deeper, what's
Yes.
underneath the headlines.
Thank you, Rod, and thank you for joining us. Do us a favor, hit that like button, hit that heart button, and share it with friends that need access to these insights and this information to broaden their perspective and give them the real facts behind the news headlines of the day. Thank you so much for joining us. Be blessed, and we'll see you next week.